The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Photoshop Creative Cloud Techniques webinar with Terry White. My name is Sai and I'll be your host today. Some housekeeping items before we move ahead. On your screen to the left is the GoToWebinar viewer through which you will see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can select an audio mode and ask questions. Our presentation today will last for about 40 minutes, after which we'll be open for Q&A. As we go through the webinar, please leave us your questions. Most importantly, this webinar will be recorded and sent to you via email in 48 hours. Okay, with the housekeeping items aside, let's move on to the webinar. We have Terry White today with us, and I'm really excited. He is the principal evangelist for Adobe Systems. Terry's been with Adobe for over 18 years now and has extensive knowledge of Adobe's creative professional product line. I've heard if you really want to learn Photoshop techniques, he is the guru to learn from. So with no further ado, I'll hand it to Terry, who will take us through the presentation.
All right, and thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's my pleasure to partner with SanDisk today and talk about the Creative Cloud Photography Plan and what it means to you, and more importantly, show you some tips and techniques and workflows with both Lightroom and Photoshop. So without further ado, let's start the process. I'm going to go to Lightroom. And for those of you who are new to Lightroom or new to managing your photos with this product, one of the things that, of course, people start to ask are, well, like, how do I get my photos in? What's it really doing to my photos, if anything? How do I manage my photos on one computer versus another hard drive, so forth and so on. So let's get some of that out of the way real quick, and then we can get into the meat of the features and how this works. So the first thing I want to do is I want to actually bring in some new photos. I have some photos on the screen we're going to work with, but before we get to that, let's bring in some new ones. I have a folder. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that folder over on screen so you can see it. And in this folder, there's another folder called Adobe Play. And in this Adobe Play folder, you can see that there are JPEGs. There are CR2 files, which means they're Canon RAW files. There are some NEF files, which means they're Nikon or Nikon, depending on what part of the world you pronounce it from, RAW files. And of course, there could be a variety of other kinds of camera manufacturer RAW files or DNGs. What I want to do is, since these images have already been placed on my hard drive in a folder, which of course you can just plug in your memory card, copy them to a folder if you want to do it that way, or you can import them using the import dialog box in Lightroom. But in either case, the end result is going to be that they're going to be in a folder somewhere on your hard drive, wherever you tell it to be. So I've got my, I've got two partitions for my hard drive, and one of them is called Expanse. So this particular one is on the Expanse partition. I know where it is. That's where I put it. So when I go ahead and drag this folder into Lightroom, that's just a quick shortcut to tell Lightroom where that folder is and to start the import process. So as you can see, it knows that it's on the Expanse hard drive or partition. It knows the name of the folder. It's found it in the drive structure where it is. I've also told it to include any subfolders. And then this is one of the things that people get caught up on sometimes, or not knowing the difference is, well, when do I copy, or when do I move, or when do I add? Well, for the most part, Lightroom will figure that out for you. So it says, well, since these images are already on a hard drive versus, for example, a memory card or a SanDisk memory card, it's saying add them, meaning you've already copied them off your card, no need to do any copying. But if I had plugged in a card to a card reader, then my choices would be most likely copy or copy as DNG. The difference between those, copy would be to copy the images as is, no conversion whatsoever. Copy as DNG would convert your proprietary camera manufacturer's RAW files into what's called digital negative, or an open standard for RAW files. So when I'm copying from my card, I am 99.9% of the time shooting in RAW, and therefore I'm copying as DNG. And when they're already on the drive, then I'm just going to do an add. I don't think in my, I don't know, 10, 12 years of using Lightroom that I've ever done a move. I've just never needed to move them from one place to another while I'm importing. I've done that after the fact, but not while importing. But anyway, let's go ahead and do the add. And of course, it shows thumbnails of all the pictures. If I need to go into a little bit more detail and say, well, I can't really see what that is, it's too small, I can bring it up in loop view and say, oh, that's the guy's playing the guitar. I know which one that is now. If there are ones that I don't need, of course, I can uncheck them and turn them off and not bring the ones I don't want. And then over here on the right-hand side is where, I'm sorry, not where, because they're already on the drive, so there's no where. But it's two things that you want to know about. One, it's been in Lightroom since Lightroom 5, and that is build smart previews. When we build smart previews, what that's telling Lightroom to do is after the images have been added to Lightroom, it builds a preview file that's much smaller than the original file, but for all intents and purposes, has 99% of the benefits of the original file. So this allows me to carry a Lightroom catalog on, say, a laptop with literally thousands or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of images on it, but never really having to carry the original images with me because of the smart previews. We'll get into that more in a moment, but the new one for Lightroom CC and Lightroom 6 is the new Add to Collection. And what this allows me to do is, and I'll explain the difference between a collection and a folder in a moment, but what it allows me to do is upon import now, I can go ahead and say, yeah, not only do I want to add these images, but I want to add them to a collection as well. If the collection does not exist, I can go ahead and choose to create the collection on the fly. So I'm going to call it the same thing so we know what it is. And I can tell it what folder of collections to put it in. And more importantly now with Lightroom CC, if I'm a Creative Cloud member, I also get the additional benefit of syncing them to Lightroom Mobile, so that those images are not only on my computer, but they're on my mobile devices, whether they're iOS or Android, as well as the web. So let's go ahead and create that collection. The collection's been created now, and now I'll go ahead and do the import. And one thing you'll notice about the import, it happens very fast because the images are already on your drive. It doesn't have to move them. It doesn't have to copy them. It doesn't have to do anything. As a matter of fact, the import's done. What it's doing now is step 2, building the smart previews. And anything you see happening in the upper left-hand corner, whether it's 1 progress bar, 2 progress bars, 3 progress bars, no matter how many it is, that's all being done in the background. So you don't have to wait for that bar to finish to go on to your next task. You can go on and just start working right away in Lightroom and let that finish while it's doing. You can even start another task because Lightroom is technically multi-threaded, meaning it can handle several tasks at once. So while it is doing that, I will point out that it did bring in the Adobe Play folder. That is physically where the images are on the hard drive. And if I twirl that up and go down a little bit, there's an Adobe Play collection that's empty at the moment because it's doing it in steps. It's building the smart previews first, and then once it's done, it will add them to the collection. Now, for those of you who are wondering what's the difference between a folder and a collection, I get that question all the time. Let's go to a different collection, and I'll show you the difference. Now, these are some images. I just spent 3 weeks in Asia, and here's some images that I shot in different cities. So the first few images, or first couple of images, were done in Auckland, New Zealand, or maybe that's Melbourne. I can't remember. I think that's Melbourne, actually. Melbourne, Australia. The next few images are from Hong Kong up to here. These images are in Singapore. So as you might imagine, I put those images into each of their respective folders as I brought them in. So I did my import while I was in Australia. I did my import while I was in Hong Kong. I did my import when I was in Singapore, and then they all got put in their respective folders. However, I wanted to see my entire trip as one set of images, and I built a collection called APAC, or Asia Pacific 2015, and put 17 images in it so far. So that's the difference. If you think about it as it relates to music, you might have a music library with 10,000 songs in it, but of course you don't usually listen to 10,000 songs at one time. So what you tend to do is you put them in playlists, so you can not only put the songs you want to listen to in the playlist, but you can also change their order, and you can choose just the ones you want. So for example, with a folder, the images that's where they're physically located, But a playlist or a collection, in this case with photos, I can do anything I want. I can move them around. They can come from different folders. I can put the same images into different collections, just like you could put the same songs into different playlists. So, and of course, these aren't taking up any extra space on my drive. I can have, the same image in 50 collections, and it wouldn't duplicate it 50 times. It's one image that's still in the folder that it originally was imported from. Now, it's done that, so it's basically created the Adobe Play collection with 44 images in it, and I can see now the third step of the process is happening in the background, where it's now syncing those 33, or it's 33 so far, left, 30 to go now. It's syncing those 40 some odd images, or 44 images, up to Lightroom Mobile, which we'll get into that a little bit later. So that's the import process so far. Now let's talk about some of the editing process and some of the tips and tricks. I'm going to switch over to one of the first things that I like about the new Lightroom, and that is the fact that it now has the built-in capabilities to do HDR, or high dynamic range images, as well as merging panoramas as well, without having to go to Photoshop to do it. Yes, I love Photoshop, use it all the time, it's open on my computer all day long, but if I can get something done in one application, why have to do it in two? So this is the case where my images are always being managed by Lightroom, so the more Lightroom can do, the better. And then that saves me from having to go to Photoshop. Unless it's something Photoshop does better, then I'll go to Photoshop and do it. So what's going on with these three images? As you can see, there are three different exposures. This, of course, if I show you one of these, here, let's go full screen on it. We'll see that this image, you might recognize it. It's the Sphinx in Egypt with one of the Great Pyramids behind it. And I was fortunately I got to shoot it. Unfortunately, I got to shoot it at the worst possible time of day. Middle of the day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, horrible, horrible light conditions for shooting a landscape like this. It would have been better to shoot it in the morning or in the evening, but my schedule just wouldn't permit that, so it was either shoot it in the middle of the day or don't shoot it at all, because you don't have another day to do it. So I made the best of it. I went out and I realized that the lighting was going to be bad, so I set my camera to bracketed exposure so I could capture at least three different exposures at different stops. So my default was 3 exposures at 2 stops difference in between. So in a situation like this where if we look at it one more time, we can see the Sphinx, but the sky is completely blown out. We go to the next exposure, we can start to see the sky, but the Sphinx and the pyramid are too dark. And we go to the third one, it's completely blown out, but that's what the 3 brackets did. Now, I also, unfortunately, did not have a tripod, so I was shooting this handheld. I'm going to go ahead and select all 3 of these. And by the way, you'll notice this little flag in the lower right-hand corner of each image. That little flag, whenever you see it in Lightroom, means that that photo has geotag information. So if I really want to go back and see where I shot this photo, I can just click on it, and that will take me over to the map module in Lightroom and show me exactly where I was standing, or approximately where I was standing, when I shot those 3 photos. So there's the Sphinx. We can see it lying down, and I'm standing in front of it. And you might say, well, where's the pyramid? Well, if we move over a little bit, there's the pyramid behind it. That's pyramid number 2, pyramid number 1, pyramid number 3, or 1, 2, and 3, depending on which way you count them. So that shows me exactly where I was when I took the photo, because I had a GPS on my camera at the time. It even shows me that that was 5 years ago, back in 2010. All right, so let's go back. Take a look at those 3 photos. Let's select all 3. And now I'm going to right-click to show it. I normally do it from a keyboard shortcut, but let's right-click, Photo Merge, HDR. Now when we bring this up, we'll see that it's building a preview of the one exposure that it's going to put together from the 3. We'll also see a feature called Auto Align, which Auto Align is great because what that enabled me to do is take my 3 shots that were handheld that probably aren't perfectly aligned because I didn't have a tripod, and it aligned them for me, or it will align them for me, and it produced this exposure. Now, this exposure is way better than the other 3 that I had Not perfect by any means, but certainly better than what I started with. But if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't realize that there's yet another problem with these three images. When you shoot bracketed, or the three exposures, your camera's literally taking 3 pictures, 5 pictures, 7 pictures, whatever you got it set on. And therefore, even if you're on a tripod, you're not moving, but that's not saying that anything in the scene is not moving. So in this case, I didn't realize this when I took the shot 5 years ago. I saw some things back there, some horses, maybe camels, whatever they were, but I didn't realize, or didn't think about the fact that they were moving at the time. And when I went click, 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 well, those horses were moving through all 3 clicks. So what I wound up with was 3.5 horses. That's a half a horse right there, because that's 3 exposures put together of 3 moving objects. And I can see a very long camel right there, and that camel is probably not that long. And that, introduces another kind of problem, that even though you may not be moving, that doesn't mean something in your scene isn't moving. And that's when I learned what deghost was for. Deghost in Lightroom, and of course this is also in Photoshop CC, lets me turn on whatever I think should be the right amount. They weren't moving that fast, so I'm going to do a low amount. And what it will do, since I have the overlay turned on, is it will show me not only what was moving, but it will correct for it as well. So it's building a new preview, and it just finished building that preview, and now it's showing me it made the correction. Now I have the 2 horses I'm supposed to have and the shorter camels, because they were moving a little slower, so they weren't as bad. But it did the correction for me, and now if I go ahead and merge this HDR to build a new image, it will do it, and I will have one with nothing moving in the scene. Now again, that's a background process, so I could go and work on my next 3, or work on my next image, or do anything else I want to do while that's happening in the background. Lightroom is not locking me out. I can do whatever I want while that continues to happen. It's almost done, so we'll let it finish. One thing I will point out while we're waiting for that last few seconds of the progress bar to go is that what Lightroom is doing, or has now just finished doing, is it's built a brand new RAW file. So it built a new DNG, not a JPEG, not a TIFF, not a Photoshop document, not something limited. It built a new high dynamic range image for me. So now I can take that image as if the camera had captured it this way with all 3 frames together, and I can then go work on it. So now the question becomes, what's the workflow for working on it? Well, you'll notice we've already taken a look at 2 of the modules so far. The library module we've started with, and that's for organizing your images, adding keywords, making collections, moving images from folder to folder, moving images even from drive to drive. All of that happens in the library module. What the other modules are for, and we also saw, by the way, the map module that was for our geolocation. The next module we're going to head over to is the develop module. And for those of you who are new to Lightroom, but maybe you've used Photoshop in the past, Lightroom is, the develop module in Lightroom is a single panel on the right-hand side that is basically, for all intents and purposes, Adobe Camera Raw. It's got all the same sliders as Camera Raw. They usually match each other, the current version of Photoshop, Camera Raw, and the current version of Lightroom usually are identical in features. Sometimes one will lag behind the other briefly, but they're usually pretty much right in sync. The biggest difference, and what makes me want to use Lightroom over Camera Raw, is one thing I get in Lightroom that I don't get in Camera Raw, and that's this screen over here, this left screen, which is a preview. So if I hover over some of my presets, for example, here let's look at some of the black and white presets. I can see what these are going to do to the image in the left-hand side before I ever even click on them. So I'm just hovering over these and seeing what they're going to do. I don't have a preview in Camera Raw, but I do have one in Lightroom. All right, so with that said, now that we know what it is and what minor differences there are, let's go ahead and start working on this image. Well, the first thing I notice is that it's got kind of a white border around it, and that was caused from the auto align, because since it had to align the images, and the images don't necessarily match up, it left over some space. So I'm going to go ahead and do a crop, and of course everything, just like in Camera Raw in the develop module, is non-destructive. So when I do this crop and turn it off, it did the crop, but I haven't lost the image. That it just happened in metadata, and therefore if I go back 10 years from now, I can uncrop this image if I choose to, or crop it some more. So you're never losing anything, you're never permanently changing anything with anything you do in the develop module. So that's why I like doing as much as I can in Lightroom, because it's a non-destructive workflow. So with that said, the next thing I might want to do is a little sharpening. People will weigh in on when to do the sharpening, before or at the end or in the middle, and I typically do it at the front, at the beginning. And again, there's no law that says you have to do it one way or the other, whatever your preference is. All right, with that, the next thing I will do is, since this is more of a landscape image and not a portrait, I will typically go ahead and increase the clarity. I used to use the clarity on my portraits as well, and then along the way, right around Lightroom 4, I think it was, clarity got a lot stronger and didn't really look as good on people as it does on things or landscape. So I stopped using it on people unless it's a guy and I'm trying to make the guy look really crunchy and really hard and, you know, really defined. But for women, I would probably never use the clarity again. It makes the image look too harsh. But for landscapes, it's great. All right, so we'll also increase the vibrance a little bit. Now, vibrance will make things more vibrant or less vibrant. So you can even kind of tone the image down, remove some of the color, or just make the color a little bit more punchy. And again, this is all to taste. If you like more, do more. If you like less, do less. And of course, since it is a landscape, something I would usually don't do to a person, I can also increase the saturation. So just bumping those up a hair. Now, the other thing that I notice is that, you know, again, it's middle of the day, so the pyramid is still kind of hazy. So let's go ahead and scroll down to a brand new feature in Lightroom CC and also in Camera Raw. It's called Dehaze. And Dehaze is a feature that allows you to either add haze by dragging the slider to the left or remove haze by dragging the slider to the right. Now, it's not going to make a tremendous difference on this photo, but it will make a difference. I can start to remove some of that haze out of the pyramid. All right, so now the pyramid's looking great, or better. Sphinx is looking better. The sky still isn't what I want. And also, I can see that my shadows are being slightly clipped, so I can go ahead and just slightly adjust that right here in the histogram. These are all sliders that you can work directly in the histogram as well. So we have that done. Now, again, my sky isn't what I want, so I'm going to switch over to the graduated filter tool. And the graduated filter, I'm going to set it to, we'll set it to exposure. And I'm just going to go ahead and just drop it down a little bit before I start to use it. And then we'll go ahead and pull it down. Now, as you can see, it will gradually, from the top down, make it a little darker. And now that I've pulled that down, I can go ahead and make it more darker or darker. And I can also play with any other controls. So if I want the sky to be bluer, I can adjust the temperature of the sky or the saturation. And it's probably a little too blue, maybe right about there. Now, I've always liked the graduated filter, except when there's something that that's in the way. Like, in other words, the pyramid is in the way. It's not just sky. If this were just a flat landscape, my sky would be perfect. But now that the pyramid's in the way, as you can see, the pyramid is also now kind of blue at the top. And now I'm happy that in the latest version of Lightroom CC and Camera Raw, there's a new brush option. And what I can do is now click on brush, click erase. It's already set to auto mask. And then I can just go in. I'm using my Wacom stylus, by the way, which is easier to work with. And I can just start to paint that blueness out of the pyramid, but leave it in the sky. Now, if I weren't on this webinar and I was really taking time trying to make this image perfect, I'd zoom in, I'd use a small brush, and I'd really get into the detail all the way up to the edge, making sure I got rid of all of that blue. But just for something down and dirty or quick like this, for the webinar, I'll just go ahead and do it quickly. All right, so we've got that kind of brushed away. And again, we haven't lost control over everything else. So again, I can still make everything else bluer. I can still make everything else darker, lighter, whatever I want, but now it's no longer affecting the pyramid. Now, along the same lines, the Sphinx is, the face is exposed for what it was, but I would like it a little lighter. So I'm going to switch to the radial filter, which we introduced last year. And I'm going to go ahead and, actually, we introduced that 2 years ago. This is 15, yeah, that was probably 13. I'm going to go ahead and drag out a radial filter, also set to exposure, and we'll make it a little bit lighter. And as you can see, it's like basically just putting a light after the fact on your subject. I can even move it around in real time because of the nice fast processing here in Lightroom. So I'm going to put it back where I had it, right about there. And of course, I can always come back and adjust it. So if it's too light, too dark, I can continue to adjust it. But we have the same problem where the lightness is spilling out onto the other areas of the photo. So it also has a brush with the erase option and auto masking. So I can go around the edge and brush away that lightness off the edges and just put it on the face. I can even come down and get it off the bottom of the neck here, and there we go. And of course, once I'm done, I can, and again, these points don't go away, so if I ever want to come back and adjust that, I can click the radial filter, click the same point that's always going to be there on the image. I can go back and adjust it, make it brighter, make it darker, whatever I want to do, and again, it's non-destructive, it will always be there. Same thing for the radial or the graduated filter. If I click on that, there's a point there I can click on and go back and start adjusting the graduated filter as well. So you're not locked in. If you make an adjustment, you don't like it, you can always come back and change it. So where did we start from? We started from here. So we started from here, and now we're, hang on. Oh, sorry. And now we're here. Let's go full screen with it. There we go. So kind of a before and after. Again, not a perfect image just because the lighting's not great in the middle of the day, but we can certainly make the image much more usable than what we have here and here. All right, so with that said, this becomes a new image. I can do whatever I want with it, move it around. And I'll take this opportunity to talk about getting this image out of Lightroom, which is something I normally would do at the end of a workflow demo, but sometimes I forget to do it. So let's talk about that right now real quick. And you'll know that basically all of the sliders and everything I did in the develop module, and let's go back to that image. Everything I did in the develop module, of course, is for making the image look better. But if I want to work on where the image is, metadata, and all that, then I go back to the library module, and I've been doing all of that to the new RAW file, to the new DNG. Well, of course, if I wanted to give this to a client, put it on social media, put it on my website, then I need, a JPEG or a TIFF or something else. I can't give them the RAW file. I shouldn't give them the RAW file. So let's go to the File menu, and this is where we now choose Export. Now, once you set this up, you would just simply go to one of your presets and use it. But for the first time, we'll just go to Export. We can tell it where to put the images once we export, so I'm just going to put it on the desktop. We can then tell it if we want to rename the image. We can rename the images to whatever we want. So we can make it a custom name. We can type the name in. I can say this is Egypt 2010, and I can do a custom name with a sequence, so that way it'll just number the images if I have more than one. We can then choose what format we want it out in. I want a JPEG. We can choose the quality of that JPEG. We can choose the color space of the JPEG, which I would normally do sRGB for the web. I would also bring the quality down a little bit for the web. Again, it's to your taste. You can even limit the file size for the web, so it makes it whatever size maximum you want. You can resize the image, so it's not putting up a multi-megapixel, huge, large image. For example, if you were posting it to Instagram, Instagram just up there to 1024. You can do 1024, for example, on the longest dimensions, or if you cropped it square, you can do 1024 by 1024. 72 pixels per inch. I usually don't do any sharpening on output, but you could, and you can then say, what metadata you want included. So if you want the location information in, camera information, it will put that in the metadata of the file it makes. And you can even watermark it if you want. So I'll watermark it with my stamp that I already set up in the watermarks. Then once it's done, it's going to show it to me. Now, I don't want to ever have to do all of this again. I don't want to have to do this every single time. So that's what this add button is for. I can say, for example, this is my new preset for SanDisk. So anytime I'm giving images to SanDisk, I just use that preset, and I never have to change the settings again. So now I'll do the export, and we get a progress bar because the progress bar is doing something that's making it real. And here's my new image, 2010, with my watermark on it that's no bigger than 1024 in the longest dimension at 72 pixels per inch, and it's a JPEG from the raw file. That's 175K. So that's how we get the images out. Now I did that for one. I could have selected 10. I could have selected 100. I could have selected 1,000. Sometimes people ask me, well, how do I, convert a whole bunch of images into JPEG? And I just say, export them. Because if you're in Lightroom, that's just how easy it is. If you're in Photoshop, then you've got to make a script. You've got to make an action. You've got to do some manual process to get them exported. But Lightroom is literally just choosing export. Now if I wanted to go back to my what was I in? My collection for APAC, and I wanted to export these 3 images out for SanDisk. I would just go File, Export with Preset for, what is it, SanDisk. There it is. And there's already one out there that's the same name, so we use a unique name, and we'll go ahead and do it. Now it's going to call them all Egypt because I told it to change the name. But you don't have to tell it to change the name, and then it will use the original names that you had in Lightroom. So here are my new images, all with the watermarks, all exported out, ready to hand over to my client, my website, whatever. So that's the workflow for going into Lightroom, working on an image in Lightroom, exporting it out from Lightroom. Let's continue. Next thing we want to do is we want to take a look at 2 things. One is the new way of identifying your photos. So everything we did with that Adobe Play is done. It was doing that all in the background. So it imported, made the smart previews, put them in a collection, and synced them to Lightroom Mobile. It's all done doing all that now. Again, we could have come and started working on the images at any point, but it's done its job. Now let's say you're going to keep these images forever, and you now want to be able to find them whenever you want. Now, for a month or so, I might remember that, oh yeah, they're in the Adobe Play collection. But after that, all bets are off. I may not ever remember what collection these particular photos are in. So that's why we use keywords, and we've used keywords for years. So for example, if I bring up this photo, I would start to look at it and say, what are the things about this photo that I may look for later? The first thing that caught my eye was the nice blue background. So I would go over to the keyword area, and I would type in blue background. In other words, I'm creating or using keywords that I've created before. All right, next thing is, well, she's a woman, so we would do woman, girl, lady, whatever you like. She's Asian, so I have an Asian tag as well. I would do, she's brunette, okay, so we'll do brunette. She has long hair, I would do long hair. Red lipstick. Again, these are all search words that I may look for. I may be looking for a campaign and doing all the women that I've ever photographed that have red lipstick on. So that way I'd be able to find it quickly. Or I may be looking for everyone wearing a gray sweater or something gray. So that's the whole point of the keywords. So once I'm done, it put all the keywords in, and here they are. And I can search at any time. If I go back to here, I can just click on all photos, which I have 4,400 in this catalog, but all photos, and then I can go up to my text, and I could search for anything I want. So if I were searching for Asian it would find all the Asian images that were tagged with Asian. If I'm searching for any other keyword, it would find those as well. So if I'm, that's the way it works. But what if I'm looking for the actual people, the names? For example, I know her name is Mary, and sure, I could go over here and type in Mary, and it would find it. But then that requires me to go through every photo, especially if I'm trying to do this for people, and looking to see if they have people in them or not, because not all of them do. That one doesn't. And then I'd have to go, of course, type the names in. And what if the photo has more than one person in it? Then I've got to type the name in twice, or both names in, because I want to be able to search for whatever their names are. I don't know their names, so whatever their names are. So Lightroom CC now has a feature to help you with this, and it's under the View menu, and it's called People. When you're in a folder, collection, or whatever, you can go to the People view, and it will start to look through that folder, collection, or whatever. It's doing it in the background, but it's detecting faces. So it's looking for any image in that folder, collection, or whatever that has a face in it. If the faces are similar or close enough, it will then figure it's the same person and start stacking them together. So you'll see it's like some of the images are moving around because it's stacking them on top of each other, figuring that those are the same people. So far it's found 4 images, now 5 images of Mary. And I see some other images of Mary, but it's not close enough for it to know, because at the end of the day, it's not a person, it's a computer. So it's using an algorithm to try and figure out, number 1, if they're faces, and number 2, if they're the same face. Once it's done, which it's almost done here, or you don't have to wait for it to be done, you can start going through and naming those faces. In other words, I can see, first of all, if I click, that those, in fact, are all 5 of the same person. And then I can come down here where it says question mark, and I can just type in that person's name. Once I do that and hit enter, it will then move it from the unnamed people to the named people, and now I've got a named person there. So I can do the same thing here. I know who this person is. That's Jesse Boykin. And yes, you can put in first name, last name, full name, middle initial, whatever you want. Now, it's done doing all of that for identifying the faces, and now I'm starting to go through and identify who they are. So I see that this is Mary, and it didn't guess. I can either type it in, or my favorite way to do is just simply drag it up. Now, Lightroom is still working behind the scenes as you're doing this. And you'll notice that now it's getting smarter. It's saying, well, wait a minute. If those people were Jesse, is this Jesse? And I can say, well, in fact, yes, it is. And then notice it got smarter. It says, is this Mary? Well, yes, it is. So it will continue to identify who those people are if they start to be close enough. And as you start to identify them yourself, then it gets smarter. So the more faces of the same person you identify, the smarter it will get, and stacking and suggesting and prompting you to say, is this that person, until you've named them all. Now, there may be cases where it named or it found faces that you don't want. For example, these aren't people I know. And if I double click, I can see why. Because they're on a book. It just happened to be in a photo. They are, in fact, faces on the book, so it did identify them. So I can go in and say, well, I'm never going to care who this person is, unfortunately. I won't ever know. So let's go ahead and simply delete the people regions off that photo. And therefore, when I go back, and by the way, you can also add people regions for the photos it did not guess because they were obscured with shadows or hands or slightly or tilted too far to the right or left. You can go ahead and do that. So now if we go back and look at the people view, those pictures have been eliminated because I got rid of the people regions. And again, even if they're, here, let's see if I can remember which one has multiple. Yeah, even if there are pictures with multiple people in it, it will put a face region on both faces. So once you identify that face, even if it's in a picture with multiple faces, it will handle it for you. All right, next up, let's talk about Haze. And actually, let's do, I'm just trying to figure out which one I'm going to do next. So let's talk about Lightroom Mobile, and then we'll come back, do Haze, and then go right to Photoshop. All right, so the next thing we want to do, and I've only got a few minutes left before Q&A. So let me quickly just talk about Lightroom Mobile. I'll just show it to you and show you what the benefit of it is. And by the way, Lightroom Mobile, I'm going to show it to you because I don't have time to show it to you on everything. I'm just going to show it to you on the iPad. It is available on iPad, iPhone, Android phone, and Android tablet. So it's available on all of those platforms. All right. I see that it connected. Let's go ahead and bring it back up to the front. There we go. Here's my iPad. And now when I go to my Adobe folder, go to my Lightroom app, I will see that it is starting to sync and bring down that Adobe Play collection. So this is what we mean by syncing up, using Creative Sync to sync up to Lightroom Mobile and then back down to your mobile devices. All right, so here the images are starting to come in, and my iPad flat out just doesn't have enough storage and probably won't ever have enough storage to store thousands of raw files. But it definitely has enough storage to store or look at thousands of smart previews. So for example, I can look at this photo. I can tap on it and see it bigger. I can swipe at the bottom and go into my tagging feature or my, I can see, for example, it's got 1 star already. I can swipe up and mark it as a pick. I can say, no, actually this photo is a little bit better. Let's swipe up and give it 4 stars or 3. Oh, actually, let's swipe up. There we go. 4 stars. And then if I want to make some adjustments, I can as well. So I can go ahead and crop the photo. I can use a specific aspect ratio. So for example, let's say I do want to put it on Instagram. I'll crop it square. I'll recompose it. I'll tell it that my crop is done. And in the upper left-hand corner, we can see the little cloud symbol with a plus sign on it because it's waiting for me to finish. And then as soon as I'm finished, it will start syncing. You can see the little dots going. It's syncing that metadata back up to Creative Cloud. I can also see back on my desktop that it's finished or just finished or was finished syncing that one photo. So if we go back and look at that collection again, we can see that the image is now square, 4 stars, and has the pick flag. So wherever I make adjustments, whether it's on my desktop or whether it's on my mobile device, everything will be in sync using Lightroom Mobile as part of your Creative Cloud membership. All right, and again, that syncing happens in the background. You don't have to wait for it. So let's move on to Dehaze. Dehaze is a new feature that I think once you use it on an image, you'll always at least try it on future images to see if you like it or not. So here's the problem that we often run into. We have images like, for example, like this, where you try to shoot something cool outside the airplane window, and of course it's all hazy because it's middle of the day. And this is more what that image would look like. So let's go to this one. Well, we can now use a single slider, which I showed it a little bit earlier, to bring these images back or get them to look better. Just sliding this over and dehazing that image, bringing out the quality of it. If you really want to see how it works, I think that one's just okay. Let's take a look at this one. Misty, foggy, cloudy day, and we can go ahead and just simply pull this over and dehaze. Now, on the 4th of July, I shot this image, which was fireworks, and I wasn't really happy with it because there's just too much smoke. You can barely see the firework. So I thought, I know, dehaze. And sure enough, I pulled the slider all the way over to 100, as far as it would go, and that's when I realized, oh, it's 100. It's not 125 or 148 or 162 or auto again or whatever. Sometimes you need more. And that's as far as it will go. I can't dehaze it anymore in Lightroom. And if there were ever an example of where someone asked me, well, when would I use Photoshop versus Lightroom? This is going to be one of those examples. So let's reset this image. Let's reset the dehaze. Let's put the smoke back in. And now let's head over to Photoshop, because in Photoshop, by the way, if I want to get to Photoshop, I can just use a keyboard shortcut or say Edit in Photoshop CC 2015, and that will open that image up in Photoshop for me. Now, if there were ever the case where someone says, well, when would you use one versus the other? When I need to do something that Lightroom can't do. Lightroom is great, non-destructive adjustments, sliders, easy, but sometimes I need more power. Sometimes I need to break the rules, and I need to break the 100 rule. So in this case, I'll go to my filter menu. I'll come down to Camera Raw filter, which has all the same benefits as the Develop module in Lightroom. So if I go to the effects panel, I can go ahead and dehaze this photo to 100, just like the other one. So I get the exact same result. But now when I click OK, the difference is, because I did this in Photoshop, well, guess what? It's a filter. That means you can run it again. Dehaze again. Run it again. 300% now. Run it again. 400% now. I can dehaze this as many times as I want to. And now I've got the firework I dreamed about. As a matter of fact, I wish that were multiple bursts. So let's go ahead and duplicate the layer. And we'll go ahead and move it over. Okay, and you're saying, well, wait a minute, Terry, I can't see the other one now. No problem. We'll duplicate the layer again. And we'll move that one over. And now you're really saying, well, I don't know what you're doing. But let's change the layer blending modes. Let's change them from normal to lighten. In other words, get rid of the dark sky. Just show me the fireworks. Lighten again. And now we have all three. And now, because we don't want them to all look identical, I can hit free transform, and I can go ahead and scale this one down, rotate it, put it wherever I want. And I would, by the way, mask out whatever that mountain is down in the background, but let's go ahead and get that out of the way for now. And we'll go ahead and commit to that one. The next one, we'll do the same thing. We'll pull this one down, and we'll scale it. There we go. And we'll move it back in place. And maybe we want to even change the color of one of these so they don't look so identical. So we'll go ahead and run a photo filter on it, and we'll choose a nice red color, and we'll change the intensity. But you're saying, Terry, wait, that's doing it to everything, and that's okay. It is Photoshop. I can hold down my Option or Alt key and tell it to only apply it to that one layer. All right, so that's what Photoshop's all about, being able to do more, and more importantly, being able to do things like add text. And so, for example, I can go to my text tool here. I can go ahead and click, and I can say happy, and of course we want to see that, so let's change the color. There we go. Oops. There we go. Happy Independence Day. Hope I got that right. So, of course, we can select it, and we can just simply bring down the point size with a nice slider. And, of course, we can pick it up, put it wherever we want. And once we lock it in, you might say, well, what if I don't like that font? Well, I can go up to the font menu, and now in Photoshop CC, if I don't know what these fonts really look like in context to what I'm showing here, I can just hover over them until I get the one I like, not the symbols. Once I get the one, ooh, I kind of like that one. That's kind of funky. Let's do that. Once I get the one I want, maybe not narrow italic, just narrow. There we go. And then, of course, I can still go in and scale it because now it's too small. So once I save this, it's doing its save down here in the background. It's a background process as well in Photoshop. So I can go on and do other things while that's saving. Remember the days when you'd have a progress bar and you'd have to just sit and watch it? You couldn't do anything else? All right, so that's been saved. And now if I switch back to Lightroom temporarily, I'll see that it's right alongside the original RAW file. So here's the original RAW file with the cloudy, smoky firework, and here's my brand new PSD or TIFF file, depending on your preference, of the fireworks. And I can export that out, put it in collections, use it in slideshows, do whatever else I want to do with it. Let's do a couple more things in Photoshop, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. All right, let's do this one first. I don't know why that's that way. Huh, I don't know why that has a box on it. Let's close that and open it back up again. So weird. Okay, that image has got issues. Let's go to this one for now. What I want to do in this case is, again, this is one of those things where, can I do it in Lightroom? Well, maybe, but is it faster and easier to do it in Photoshop? And the answer is yes. We have this zip line where we have this guy on it, or girl, I can't tell, but they're cruising down the zip line, and that's great. But then we have another one where the zip line, where the person's like all the way down here, and it's kind of like distracting because we just can't see them. So let's go ahead and remove it. Now, in the past, it would have been easy enough to do this with the spot healing brush, and it still is today, but in the 2015 version, the spot healing brush got a huge speed improvement. So your hand, unfortunately, is no faster. So I'm going through and I'm drawing that very straight, as you can see. And once I get that all painted out down there, now I haven't let go yet. I'm still holding it. When I let go, that's where you'll see the speed improvement. In the past, something this big, when you let go, you'd get a little spinny thing saying, okay, wait a second, done. Now I'm going to let go, 1, 2, 3, let go, done. And I missed some spots, but it is as fast as you can do it. No more spinny thing while you're waiting. So, or no more waiting, I should say. So that is the new improved spot healing tool. Let's go back to this one. Nope, not that one. Let's go back to this one. I don't know why I'm displaying a box on this image. Let's try it one more time. If not, I'll pick a different image. Yeah, that's weird, because I don't think that box is there. I think it's a display issue. All right, let's open up a different one here. Let's go in and open up. We'll do this one. Yeah, we'll do these guys. Yeah, same thing. It's got a box up there for some reason. I don't know if you're seeing that, but I'm seeing a white box in the upper left-hand corner. But that's okay, because what we want is down here. So we're going to go ahead and grab the hikers. And the cool thing about content-aware move in a case like this is maybe you want to move the hikers further down the trail or something to that effect. So in the past, you would have made a selection like so. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that careful or accurate. And then you'd pick it up and move it. But now there's a new option. If you look in the upper part of the menu bar here, there's a new option called Transform on Drop. And what that means is when I pick this up and move it, or maybe I want to move it back. I'm just trying to decide where I want to move it. Okay, we'll move it over here. When I pick it up and move it, when I let go, it doesn't do it yet. It's giving me a transform box saying, what else do you want to do while you've got this? So I can, for example, make them bigger. We can pick them up, make them bigger. We can rotate them. We could flip them over. We can do whatever we want while we're doing this. Then once I'm happy with it, I commit to it. It will remove the old one and, of course, put the new one in. So that is the new Transform on Drop content-aware move. Now, it still need to clone or copy the path that they were creating, but you get the idea. Content-aware move with transformation. Okay, and I think I'm out of time for demo, so let's open it up for Q&A.
All right, Teddy, this was good. So many techniques, and the pre and post photos, some of those are like magic, right? Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we've had a very captive audience. I have some questions coming in already. So people, if you have more questions, drop them in. And I know we have a few minutes, probably we have 3 or 4 time for questions or so. We'll go through them. But Teddy, do you want to give them your Twitter handle or something so they can follow you on Twitter and ask you questions there?
Absolutely. Yep, so let's hide everything here, and I left it on the desktop for you. So, oh, I didn't want to say what about, I wanted to say hide. Hide. There we go, and there's the iPad, but let's move the iPad out of the way, and you can see my Twitter handle, YouTube page, and Behance as well. Also, Facebook/Terry White fans if you want to go do it on Facebook.
Right.
But Twitter is just at Terry White. You can see it all down here. But I can take questions while they're looking at that.
All right, so we have five minutes, so I'm going to jump to the right first one here. Hold on. All right, so when you're doing a batch process, did I lose that question? Okay, so when you do a batch process, Terry, how do you apply the same filter to multiple photos, or can you do that even?
Absolutely. So that question happens all the time. So for example, let's say I want to, let's go to I'm trying to find a photo with multiple images from the same shoot. Let's do, let's go back up here, and let's go to my Amsterdam photos. Okay, so for example, I've got several photos here from the same day, same shoot, and that's usually the case where you want to make the same adjustment to multiple photos. Now, of course, I can click on photo by photo and go to the develop module and make the same adjustments, but let's say I want to make the same adjustment to these first three. Well, if I go to my develop module, you'll notice that it brings up one of them, but at the very bottom on the right-hand side, there's a difference or toggle between sync, which is the default, and what you want to do is toggle it to where it says auto sync. Because when it's on auto sync, whatever adjustment, whatever you do now to any of the selected photos, it will do it to all of them. So for example, I have all of them, and just so we can see something drastic here, let's make them all black and white. All right, make them all black and white, very harsh looking black and white at that. And now if I go back, I can see that it's made all three that black and white. So this one's black and white now. This one should be black and white. It's loading the preview, but that one will be black and white. It's doing it to all three. So that's how you would do it. Just set it to auto sync. I don't know why that one's taking a moment, but all three will be whatever you've done. So even if you crop them, adjust them, paint on them, remove spots, it will do it on all the images you select at the same time if you have it on auto sync. Now, let's say you don't want to do it to all of them at the same time. Well, if you want, you can go in, select the photo. That one finally kicked in, by the way. Select the photo, and you can, here, let's select this one. You can also choose in the develop module, on the left-hand side, copy and paste. So if you choose copy, this will let you copy pretty much everything you've done to it, or whichever specific things you've done to it. So if I only wanted to adjust the white balance, I can say none or none, click white balance, copy the white balance from this photo, select as many other photos as I want, and paste that white balance in. I'm not going to do it, but that's how it will work.
All right, Nishant, hope you got that. The next question is from Suzanne. Do you recommend converting all old CR2s in a Lightroom catalog to DNG or only the new imports?
I get that question all the time, and the answer is absolutely, even though this folder is a bad example. But question was basically, do I convert my proprietary RAW files? I'm a Nikon shooter, so I have a bunch of NEFs. Do I convert them to DNG? And the answer is absolutely, 100% of the time, except in this demo. So let's go ahead and select this folder. And so I don't have this issue going forward, but I would choose it. I would go to my library menu, and I would say convert photos to DNG. So to answer your question, I don't do it just on import. If I'm shooting tethered, for example, it can't do it while you're tethering, so I have to do it after the fact. And I just forgot to do it on these. But yes, I do always go in and convert them.
All right.
Now what it's doing is after the conversion, it will put the original one in the trash, so it will get rid of the original only after it successfully replaced it with the DNG. So if we go up here, yeah, we're starting to see DNGs here instead of NEFs. So this is the next one to convert. And wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. Of course, it's going to make a liar up. All right, go on, next question.
All right, cool. The next one
There it
is, all right, you got it, okay. It's from Benita. So if photos are not clicked in RAW, would the edit still produce the same effects, or is that limited?
If it's not RAW, will it I have the same abilities?
Yeah, when you edit.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Nothing is dimmed or grayed out for the most part, but just note that, for example, if you did shoot in JPEG, while you can adjust things like white balance and other features, they were locked into the JPEG, whereas they weren't locked into the RAW. So we don't lock you out from doing the adjustment. The result just may not be as good.
All right, cool. How to create an HDR image in Lightroom? That's from Laksha.
That's the first thing we did with the, remember the pyramid?
Yeah.
HDRs. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was basically select the images and convert to HDR using right click.
All right.
So for example, I'll do one here while we wait. I have another one down here we can do. We don't have to wait for it to finish, but I'll just show the steps.
Sure.
Here's an Atlanta HDR, so 3 brackets, right-click. And now, Photo Merge Convert to HDR is going to bring up that preview. So I'm going to show you a tip while we're doing this. I don't want to see the preview. I just want it to do it. So Control-H would be the keyboard shortcut to bring up the preview and do it. Control-Shift-H skips the preview and just does it. So now that's my second progress bar is the HDR being made while I'm also converting to DNG. So that HDR will just pop in after the fact.
Okay. All right, perfect. So I know we're at the end of the hour here. So can you go back to your desktop, Terry? I'd like the people to look
Sure.
at your IDs there. You've got a lot of videos on your YouTube channel. Obviously, I've seen those. So, you know, this is a long process. Yeah.
TerryWhite.tv.
And there is a lot more to learn. So please go there and look at the videos from Terry White. Follow him on Twitter. Ask the questions right there. I know there's more questions, but unfortunately, we got to end here. So thanks a lot, Terry. This was very good. I hope the audience enjoyed it.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure, and hope to see you guys online again. I'm going to be broadcasting today on Periscope via the Creative Cloud account, and of course, you can always go to terrywhite.com is my website, or terrywhite.tv is my YouTube channel.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.